الكريم أما بعد. We express our praise and gratitude to Allah Ta'ala, and we seek blessings upon the Prophet, peace be upon him. So once again, we are looking at Ayah 170 and this basic question of following what is not in the Book of Allah. Okay, so the problem here is when you're overriding the Book of Allah. And the point that I suggested is sometimes we might think we're overriding it, but we're not. And sometimes we might not think we're overriding it, but we are. Okay. So part of this is the attitude that Shaitan is trying to give us. What is the attitude here? He's trying to take you from a position of stability to instability. So a position of good behavior to behavior that may not be as good, okay, to get you to do evil. From a position of saying only things about Allah that are clear to lead you to talk about other things about Allah. So a very common thing that, again, college students come in and tell me is they tell me, okay, Allah hates me. Okay. And so many times I hear this, right? Again and again and again. And I ask them, well, where are you getting this from? Right? Because I'm a sinner, I'm a horrible person, I did this, and I did this haram, and I did this haram. And often I have to point directly to them to Surat Ad-Duha. So Surat Ad-Duha, who is Allah Ta'ala speaking to in Surat Ad-Duha? Primarily he's speaking to the Prophet, peace be upon him, but by extension he's speaking to everyone. So he's speaking here to us in singular. So he is speaking to us one by one. What's the story of Surat Ad-Duha? We've talked about this in the past. That there was a period of time called Fatrat al-Wahi, where the Prophet, peace be upon him, didn't get any wahi for a long time. Some say 6 months, some say even a couple years, right? And now the Prophet, peace be upon him, is getting concerned that maybe he did something wrong. Maybe he upset Allah Ta'ala, right? And I'm paraphrasing the situation. And then he receives Surat Ad-Duha and Surat Al-Inshirah. And so what does Surat Ad-Duha say? Wad-Duha وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. So when you know many surahs begin with these swears. I swear by the morning, and I swear by the night when it is calm. And what does that mean? It means that as true as the morning is, the following is true. As true as the night is still, the following after this is also true. Okay? Number one, your Lord has not abandoned you, and nor is he upset with you. Okay? So, here in the parentheses it says, O Prophet, because it's grammatically singular. But the other way to read this is Allah Ta'ala speaking to every one of us individually. Okay? That he has not abandoned you, and he is not upset with you. Okay? So this is Quran. Okay? And the hereafter, the future for you, is better for you than what came before. Yeah, this is kind of scary. Yeah. Yeah. وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. What came before. Yeah. And your Lord will give you and you'll be satisfied. Okay. And then some of this is directly related to the Prophet, peace be upon him. Did he not find you an orphan? And he gave you shelter. Okay. Did he not find you lost? And he guided you. Okay. This applies to everybody. And he found you in need, and he made you need-free. Then the last part, understanding all this, do not oppress orphans. Do not yell at or do not shun beggars, and tell everyone about the wonderful bounties of your Lord. Okay, yes, ma'am. So I'm saying that this surah is for everyone. Right? There are some particulars that are specific to the Prophet, peace be upon him. Otherwise, this is for everyone. When you see grammatical singular, so this is ma wadda'aka, rabbuka, then it's not commentators, but it's translators who are interpreting that as singular. Right? So, for example, if we look at third command. Anybody remember what the third command is? Shame. Okay. Ayah 25, وَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Give good news to those who believe, and do right, that they will have gardens beneath which rivers flow. Okay. Tara, so here, this is grammatically singular. Okay. Now, if you look in this translation, go to ayah 25. That person will probably say, "O Prophet." Yeah. Yeah, right? Because it's grammatically singular. So what I'm illustrating here with this translation is that they're often not consistent. Right? So I-25, grammatically singular, so commonly people will read that to mean it's only to the Prophet, peace be upon him. Surat al-Duha, people commonly read that as only to the Prophet, peace be upon him. So the counter-argument is the only time something is exclusively to the Prophet is when the Quran itself says it's exclusively to the Prophet. So what's an example of something that's exclusively to the Prophet?
Regarding the Prophet's wives.
Yeah, who the Prophet can marry, peace be upon him. It says, this is only for you. Okay, so yeah. So the point being, I mean, the relevance here is that so many people, and often, you know, for whatever it's worth, these are often young girls who will come to me at college age and say, okay, God hates me. And even me showing that passage in the Quran often will not be enough. Yeah. That takes a lot more work. And often I ask them to go see a counselor, like a professional counselor. You know.
Is that stemming from a lack of gratitude, or is this something deeper?
I would call it, okay, I mean, the repeated problem is in the home, lack of nourishing, right? Lots of criticism, very little nurturing. Okay. So American popular culture is very hostile to men and women, but especially to women, right? And this often plays out in Muslim subcultures too, that it becomes very, very hostile to girls. Now even someone close to me, her mom contacted me saying, hey, can you talk to her? And she's having problems with faith, and I asked her, okay, you know, what's the story? So she gave me this whole list of things that are wrong. You know, I'm going to go to hell because I do this. I'm going to go to hell because I do this. I'm going to go to hell because I do this. I'm going to go to hell because I do this. And she's like 15, right? And she gave me a list of like 30 things, okay? And each time I asked her, okay, is there anything else? Yeah, what about this? And then, okay, is there anything else? What about this? And I think what she is describing is the situation of a common Muslim suburban girl, you know, raised in America, a common Desi or Arab Muslim suburban girl raised in America. Okay. Sorry? That's a good question. This specific girl, it's only sisters in the house. My house, I was the oldest kid, and my parents were far more strict with me than they were with my two younger sisters. Correct. So every time people talk about that hypocrisy, I'm like, I don't. Yeah.
We know your voice. Please don't say that.
Yeah. Now that's recorded on international YouTube streaming. You can come to the camera and say, I love you, my betas, and all that stuff, right? Yeah. So, again, the point being that I think there's a number of factors, and I think the big part of it is that the Islam that we give them is often a bunch of nonsense. Yeah. It's well, even if Allah does or doesn't, okay, that's not something you teach a child, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of serious problems. Now, I mean, so think about take the point a step further. This kid in Chicago who just got arrested. You heard about it on Sunday? The kid from the western suburbs from IFS who got arrested at the airport. You didn't hear about this? Yeah, because they said he was planning on some violence in the name of Islam or something. And I'm sorry, he was like 18. Yeah, he's like 18, 19. Okay. And October, another kid from the western suburbs got arrested. And the model, I think, is always the same. Even these alleged guys from these Chechen guys, it's always the same model. Because I've seen this happen with my own eyes, right? First problem is that at home, again, the parents might be religious, might not be religious. Usually they're middle class or higher, okay? But they give no tenderness to the child. No tenderness. One time I had this issue with the parents, and I think I told you this, and I said, you have to be more tender with your son. And he says, how can I be tender? He never wakes up for Fajr. He never does this. He never cleans his room. He never does anything, right? Doesn't do this, doesn't do this, right? And And so that's one problem. Second problem is every time they turn on their TV, Muslims are getting killed in Burma, in Bangladesh, in India, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. I go all the way through. Every Muslim is getting killed. Every time they hear Jummah khutbah, everybody in the world is attacking us. Everybody in the world is attacking us. And so when you're 15, you're asking, okay, what do I do about this? Okay, and you go to your parents, and your parents say, be quiet, go study. Right? And then you go to the people in the masjid, and they all say, okay, you don't worry about this, go study, right? And so that's not a satisfactory answer. So the kid hears, okay, I've given up. That's what he hears from the elder generation, okay? Then what else happens? The kid starts going online to all these jihad-type sites, right, these mujahid-type sites, looking at all these videos, especially looking at videos of Americans getting killed, okay? And for that becomes almost like a badge of honor for a lot of these kids, that these are people that are actually fighting while we sit in our suburban life. So in the kid's mind, we're hypocrites, and those people are the real believers. Okay. Then on top of that, when they go to these sites, they're also being monitored by the FBI. Okay. So this one case of a kid that I knew, that he started getting approached by someone in the masjid, saying, okay, all the things that these people are saying, stay away from them. They're all munafiq. They're basically kuffar. They've given up because they love America more than they love Muslims. And you should join me. We should go fight. Okay? And this is how strange it gets. Okay? He starts giving them lectures of Imam Anwar al-Awlaki, Constance of Jihad, and these other ones. And Anwar al-Awlaki doesn't go so far as to say you have to fight, but basically he's saying, okay, fighting is always going to take place. Okay? So then Anwar al-Awlaki, he also has a very angry style, so that also attracts young people. And then here's where it gets very strange. This guy who is doing the recruiting, the FBI guy, who is pretending to be Muslim, shows, this is what happened to a kid I know. He says, look, here's the sword I used fighting against the kuffar in Albania, and this blood is the blood of the kuffar. Okay? This kid tells us, and we say, this is an FBI guy. Who uses a sword to fight? Right? Okay? But this kid's like, no, you guys are all wrong. This is the only person in the whole world who speaks the truth. Okay? And now the FBI guy is starting to entrap him. Yeah, right? And then he gets pulled in. But the whole starting point is that he has this frustration and this anger, and nobody's giving him satisfactory. Yeah. But the key point I want to make is that he is the same psychologically as the girl who is struggling, and then she has an eating disorder, or the boy who starts doing drugs, or another boy who does something else. Psychologically, I'm saying they're all the same. This person's taking this direction. Yeah.
Asking, in your experience, is there a void of Islamic education that the children are not getting, or are they getting Islamic education but just?
Well, it's the same. I mean, for lack of a more respectful word, I'd say it's the same. It's a nonsensical type of Islamic education. The whole world is believers in kuffar and all that stuff. Okay, even if it is, it doesn't give you any benefit, right? And so the type of Islamic education that they get is not really useful for them, right? And so I'd say that's one problem. But I think another problem is just they have this big, huge emptiness that they fill with anger, right? And the emptiness is because, but almost every time I've told the parents say, no, it's not my fault. Sometimes the parents listen, right, and actually make changes, but most times the parents hear, it's not my fault. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
So I think if there's a whole community issue, actually now that
I agree.
I'm a teenager, I realize no matter how educated you are, every teenage parent, what the teenager needs to have parenting classes, to just
I agree.
stand and listen to them.
Yeah, everyone needs parenting classes.
These tyrants and stop, madness them. I think that's the best thing. Just listen to them, and then when they're cooled down and you're cooled down, then have that discussion. But there is never really that cooling time. There's that combativeness.
I agree.
Write that down for yourself later.
Okay, anyway, so yeah.
But isn't there I know. Isn't there
So the boys start out naughty and then they calm down, right? Yeah.
Isn't there a void of children learning about the richness of Islamic thought?
Yeah.
And the the entire spectrum of Islamic thought? In other words, the latitude, which doesn't exist with those kids who are kind of sucked into that?
I think
if they learn about the latitude, they'd go, well, no, you don't have to go down that path.
I think so. A 15-year-old boy intellectually understands just as much as a 50-year-old adult, right? So a 50-year-old man understands just as much as a 50-year-old, right? But they don't have as much appreciation that things are complex, right? That when you're 15, you still want to understand things as black and white, right? Eventually, we grow out of that and we understand everything in the world is very complicated, right? But there's the teaching of Ali radiallahu anhu where he says that youth is a madness whose cure is old age, right? And so I think part of being young is to be angry, and
300% life.
sure, yeah.
So the girls go toward
So
self-despair,
I've
the
never.
boys go toward violence.
So I'm calling all of these self-destruction, right? It's just that I've never come across a girl who's gone down the mujahid path. All the girls have gone down through other self-destructive path, which is eating disorders, or they'll start cutting themselves, or things even worse, right? Or they'll get involved with a boy who's almost always very abusive, and they'll do anything for the abusive boy, anything for the abusive boy, right? So I'm saying central. I think that's 80% of the problem, right? And even like it's reached the point like when a girl is coming to talk to me, I will in advance I'll get like a brownie or some health bar. And I'll ask her, okay, are you hungry? Have you eaten? And they'll always say, I don't have an appetite. They won't say I've eaten. Okay? So that's a red flag. It means she doesn't eat at all. And also, they'll usually be dressed in a lot of layers, right? And then I'll have to convince them, okay, what if we share? Because I'm trying to get them to eat, right? So one girl came to me, she said, what happens to me, I can't fast a whole day. Why not? Because I just run out of energy and I have to eat something. Okay. So then I say to her, what if you do suhoor, seri, right? She says, I do that. I ask her, well, what do you have? A piece of bread. Okay. So this is all red flags in my mind. And I ask, well, what if you have a sandwich? And she says, no, I can't do that. I said, why not? And she said, there's 2 breads and it takes this and that. And then I ask her, so is it too many calories? And then she gives me the exact calorie numbers for a piece of bread and everything, right? So then I ask her, how many calories do you eat a day? On a bad day, she eats 600 calories. So what's a good day for her? 0. Right? And so because then she also started asking me in the conversation, what if I fast for 3 weeks in a row and never eat? Does that count? And I'm saying these behaviors are very common. Yeah. Because what we're calling the religious extremism, I'm calling self-destructive behavior, right? And so the common American kid, often has the same thing, but add the psychology that I'm a minority, which amplifies things, and the psychology of being Muslim in America, right? So these people who are 15, their whole life, America has been at war with Muslims, right? For us, it's only this last decade or something. But for them, that's all they know, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I agree. It is a community problem, but like I said, more often than not, the parents don't listen. Because the question I'll ask the parents, the same question is, how many times a day do you criticize your child, and how many times a day do you praise your child? The number should be even, or the praise should be higher. But most of these parents never praise. G.
I think this gives me a thing to think about.
G.
This is really strange to I'm a grandfather now.
Yeah.
But this is like these things in the closet, because of
Yeah. Every week I receive emails, and
your generation. You probably because involved, and you have. I know that feedback I get. You have created name among
I try.
and they love you.
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
but again, like community should know, and the community centers should have a kind of like we have all other things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like today, there's a big lecture of Namaz.
Yeah.
And us, I mean, older, like your second generation, because you guys are parents, and even for us, I hope still we will leave for.
Inshallah. Yeah.
So this is very strange and very hard.
Well, it's probably every week I receive multiple emails from one or more of these problems. And I know if I say this in a speech, I know within 2 or 3 days I'm going to get an email from somebody who attended.
No,
So
I think the parenting should be changed. One thing I now see that we come from different culture, of course, now and then, but still I feel whatever, I feel bad that the kids here, they need to know whether you, like you said, some parent, what do you mean, is that this?
yeah.
That doesn't mean that his father hates them.
Right, of course.
The most.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we haven't learned to say, I love you.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that's not how we go.
Yeah, it's not the back home culture.
Kids here, whether you love him or not, they want you to know here, I love you.
Yes, yeah.
Just for people.
They have to hear it.
Yes.
They absolutely have
That's
to.
things we lack, the older generation.
Yeah.
And these things have to come and change. Of course, you never solve everybody's problem, but
Sure, yeah.
now I'm thinking that this is a big lack.
No, it's. I think I still don't understand how big the problem is, and I'm telling you, it's probably at least 30% of the kids. It's a big project, right? Yeah, and and the one thing that should hopefully make us work harder and faster is because there's FBI plants in every masjid trying to find these kids to trick them, right? And so the stuff that I'm saying, I say in almost every Jummah khutbah that I go to, right? Even I gave khutbah at Northwestern, and I told all the 20-year-olds, I said, you have to now talk to all the 15-year-olds, right? Yeah. And I told all the Northwestern kids directly, I said, okay, everything I've done for you, you have to now do for these 15-year-olds.
There has to be a venue where they can come, feel free and talk. They can come here and we can move to the public space.
Yeah, that's possible, right?
They have to have a place, where
They can be free and nobody's judging them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody in here, but won't
Hasn't
that-
stopped other people, so yeah, go ahead.
won't that- hopefully, won't that mentality stop once you get into the second, third, fourth, fifth generation here, where the parents will end up talking to the kids as opposed to having that style of...
I believe that will happen in the minority of cases. What I'm suggesting will happen, so I'm agreeing with your point that, all right, in 2 generations, this disconnect will hopefully decrease. But I'm saying with each generation, we're losing a huge percentage of the Muslim kids. Yeah.
I agree with you that hopefully it will improve. But what about the Muslim we are losing right now?
Yeah. I mean, MEC, young people always come up to me saying, I'm depressed, I'm very unhappy, right? So I gave a talk at Aqsa's fundraiser a couple weeks ago, making all these same points. And I say every week I get emails from people who tell me they want to commit suicide or they're becoming atheists. Next morning, emails from two or three girls who have attempted suicide. Right? They said, I heard your speech yesterday.
Everything you're saying isn't what didn't occur during my youth or during...
It was all there.
It all occurred during our youth, but I think now it's just more, is it more prevalent or are they actually active? I don't know.
I think the number in terms of the Muslim community is much higher. Again, because when we were all young, the heroes of Islam were heroes of mainstream. Right? We had heroes. Right? These generations don't have any heroes. Okay? And instead they have these supervillains. So I'm saying there is a fundamental psychological difference. Right? So in my mind, Muhammad Ali is there, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is there, even the Sears Tower is there. Right? So it was a blessing just to be a Muslim growing up in Chicagoland, because in your mind you're being associated with winners, right? Even Imran Khan, right? I didn't know anything about cricket, but I knew Imran Khan was the best cricket player in the world, right? You know, whereas now you have Lupe Fiasco, right? And that's recent. Otherwise, what other heroes are there? And I'm suggesting that has created a big psychological difference, in addition to the fact that all they know in terms of their lives is that America's been at war with Muslim countries, right? You know. I think it might be different in Canada. I don't know. You know.
There are more. I'm speaking from the perspective of boys because we have 2 boys. There are more athletes, professional athletes that are Muslims now than ever. You know, we had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Mohamed Ali, that was it.
But he was the best, though.
Every team now.
Sure.
Well, I know,
yeah.
But what's amazing is that they can find people on every team, football, baseball, whatever, for boys.
Sure.
And not baseball. But, I mean, you know, they can find them, and it's easy for them to find. And those people identify themselves very strongly with Islam.
So you have the Abdullah brothers, who are a good example, right? So Hussein and Hamza Abdullah, who go around. So that's a fantastic example. But I think there is a consciousness that all these other people are Muslim. Yeah, right? But the suggestion I'm making is that Kareem, Muhammad Ali were outspoken about being Muslim, and they're revered as the best of them all. So yeah, Kareem was one of the only ones, but he was number 1, right? You know. But in any case, the point being that you're suggesting that, all right, there are so many other Muslim athletes that they can turn to, right? Another point is, all right, my father and I, every Sunday, we'd watch Laker games, right? And I would suggest that's probably not happening as much also.
Well, I mean, when you and I grew up, it was more of a... It was not as easy for us to be outspoken and say, yes, we're Muslim, because there weren't as many Muslim role models. There were 2. But the kids nowadays, like I was saying, they can say, yeah, so-and-so's Muslim, so-and-so. They've got people who call themselves Muslim who aren't even Muslim in the entertainment industry, right? It's so commonplace that I don't know why there would be a problem with them having a problem with being Asian. I mean, I guess, I don't know, maybe we're not having boys that are that age yet.
Maybe. I mean, even when I've asked these guys who are your heroes, they have difficulty.
Yeah, I never really thought about that. Because it brought out the only negativity in
Yeah.
whereas when we grew up, it was starting to get negative towards the late 80s.
Sure. Or you had the Iranian Revolution, and then Salman Rushdie, 10 years ago.
Our sons have ever seen positive stuff on television.
I think this is going to take a completely off course. I think the effect of the mainstream media now is diluted because there are so many different venues for attention that kids don't sit there and watch the news like we did.
But the whole sentiment's there.
That's what happens. They hear in their Islamic, in their classes and stuff like that when they have Islamic studies in their class.
Or the Jummah Khutbah, right? So again, in the context of this surah, or this ayah, what are we basically saying? That, okay, if you're choosing between what your parents' generation does and what the Quran is saying, you have to choose the Quran. But the point that I'm suggesting is there's a lot of things that a parent generation does which might be wrong, we don't realize it, or is not wrong, but we might think it's wrong. So I gave the example of Quran Khanis. The case of something like Qasida Burda, the argument I would give is that we also cannot withhold, we can't shrink how many different ways Allah gives His benefit. So Allah Ta'ala might give His benefit through a whole bunch of different ways. And we can't remove all those things. But in the case of raising our children, the basic argument here is essentially that, I forgot how it even connects to this ayah, but there was some connection at some point. But inshallah, I'll remember. Perhaps we should actually stop here. It's already 8:30. Okay, let's do ayah 171, and then we'll have the Zabi Hamid conversation next week, inshallah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So ayah 172 is when we're going to get into Zabi Hamid. Yeah. So 171. وَمَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. So the example of those who have rejected. كَمَثَلِ is the example, is the likeness. الَّذِي يَنْعِقُ بِمَا لَا يَسْمَعُ إِلَى دُعَاءً وَنِدَاءً. So the example or the likeness of those who have rejected is the likeness of someone shouting at an animal but hears nothing but calls and cries. Okay. Summun bukmun umyun fahum la ya'qilun. They are deaf, dumb, and blind. They do not understand. So, what are we looking at in this whole passage, this first part? Ayah 168, instruction to all mankind, only do what is halal and only do what's good for you. Okay? On the flip side, do not follow your enemy shaitan. Do not follow the footsteps of your enemy shaitan. So also keep in mind when we're saying the footsteps, he's a step ahead of you. You're chasing after him. Don't start chasing after shaitan. And here's what shaitan wants. He wants you to do evil, he wants you to do fahash, and he wants you to say things about Allah that you have no knowledge. That's how we got into this conversation, about these girls who say Allah hates me. Right? Okay. And the point here is that, okay, this is not something you have the privilege to say about Allah. Okay? When you are saying Allah hates you, what are you actually saying? I hate myself. That's what they're really saying. Right? Meaning I have no self-love. Oh, that was one of the points. That with a lot of these students, like part of my goal is to get them to work on valuing themselves. Right? So some of these girls will say, okay, no, I hate myself. There's no good in me. And I'll say, okay, obviously you don't believe that because you came and talked to me. So that means you do care about yourself. Right? And then the conversation builds from there. So the shaitan's strategy is to get you essentially to go into territory you're not supposed to go into. Okay? But what gets a lot of people stuck is they want to do whatever their parents' generation was doing. In other words, what are people saying? I don't want to learn. I want to do things this way. I don't want to learn. Okay? Okay? Even though the fathers might not have had any aql whatsoever. So what happens is that some people who reject, you can talk to them, and it's just like talking to an animal. So, like, you talk to a sheep, and you call a sheep to Allah. What is the sheep going to do? Bah. And so that's the problem of some people. Okay? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this context is referring to kafirs, people who have rejected, but this previous ayah is people who are stuck in their ways. And so it becomes almost like no benefit. Okay? But we still have to call. Okay? Now, that is going to set up our discussion about meat, and that'll be the core of our discussion, inshallah, next week. Okay. Okay. So we will address the questions about what type of meat can I eat. My least favorite discussion, and for people above the age of 40, the most common question is, okay, can I eat McDonald's, right? Well, I tell them McDonald's is fine because McDonald's does not have any meat, right? It's all plastic. So I just tell them filet of fish, Big Mac, it's all plastic, so it doesn't matter. Zabiha does not apply. You can't do Zabiha for plastic. Yeah. Yeah. For the people online, that's a joke. Okay. Okay, so we'll stop right here. We'll continue, inshallah, next week. But سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Okay, may Allah Ta'ala reward you all, and then we'll continue inshallah next week. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.